The hill had no name on any map, just coordinates: Hill 493, a frozen mound of rock and snow in the Ardennes forest, December 1944. Intelligence said it was lightly defended, maybe a dozen men, nothing more. So they sent 300 German soldiers, fresh uniforms, full ammunition, orders clear: take the hill before dawn, clear the road, move forward. But something went wrong. By sunrise, the snow was red. Bodies lay in rows. And on top of that nameless hill, 14 American soldiers still stood. 14. They had no reinforcements, no resupply, no way out. But they had something the Germans didn't expect. They had refused to fall. This is the story of the most brutal 48 hours in the Battle of the Bulge, a story buried in classified reports for decades, a story of 14 men who turned one frozen hill into a graveyard for an entire battalion. This is Hill 493. It began 3 days earlier, December 13, 1944, the Ardennes region, Belgium. Snow had been falling for 2 weeks straight. Temperatures dropped to -15°C. Visibility was nearly zero. The Allied front line stretched thin across the forest, held together by exhausted infantry divisions that had been fighting since Normandy. Among them was Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 110th Infantry Regiment, 28th Division. They were not elite troops. They were not paratroopers or rangers. They were regular infantrymen, farm boys from Pennsylvania, factory workers from Ohio. Most of them had never seen combat before France. But by December, they had seen enough. Easy Company had been pulled back from the front for rest. They were supposed to rotate out, get hot meals, sleep in real bunks. Instead, they were ordered to a quiet sector, a place where nothing ever happened, a place called the Schnee Eifel Ridge. Their commanding officer, First Lieutenant James Hargrove, didn't like it. Quiet sectors don't exist in war, he told his platoon sergeants. Quiet just means we don't know what's coming yet. He was right. On December 15, German radio intercepts started picking up unusual traffic, heavy vehicle movement, artillery repositioning, but Allied intelligence dismissed it. The Germans were beaten, they said. The war would be over by Christmas. Lieutenant Hargrove didn't wait for orders. He sent out a 2-man patrol, Corporal Eddie Novak and Private First Class Leon Hayes. Their mission was simple: move east, watch the tree line, report anything unusual. They returned 6 hours later, covered in snow and out of breath. "Sir," Novak said, his voice shaking, "there's a whole damn army out there." Hargrove grabbed him by the collar. "How many?" "I don't know." "Hundreds. Tanks. Half-tracks. They're setting up in the woods. Camouflaged. We got within 50 meters before we saw them." Hayes nodded, still catching his breath. "They're coming, sir. And soon." Hargrove immediately radioed battalion headquarters. He reported the sighting, requested air reconnaissance, requested reinforcements. The response came back 2 hours later: negative. No evidence of large-scale enemy buildup. Maintain current positions. Do not provoke engagement. Hargrove stared at the radio in disbelief. He turned to his platoon sergeants, Staff Sergeant Carl Brenner, Sergeant Thomas McCoy, Sergeant Vincent DeLuca. "They're not listening," Hargrove said quietly. "So we prepare anyway." That night, Easy Company dug in. They reinforced their foxholes, strung barbed wire, laid anti-personnel mines along the approach routes. They had 3.30 caliber machine guns, 2 bazookas, and enough rifle ammunition for maybe 2 hours of sustained fighting. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. December 16, 05:30 hours. The world exploded. German artillery opened up along a 20-mile front. Thousands of shells screaming through the darkness. The ground shook. Trees shattered. Snow turned to steam. This was Operation Wacht am Rhein, Hitler's last great offensive in the West. 25 divisions. Over 200,000 men. Their objective: smash through the Ardennes, reach the Meuse River, capture Antwerp, split the Allied armies in half. And standing in their way, on a frozen hill with no name, were 14 men from Easy Company. The rest of the company had been scattered by the bombardment. Headquarters section was gone. 2nd platoon had retreated south. 3rd platoon was cut off and surrounded. Only 1st platoon remained. 14 men. Lieutenant Hargrove, Staff Sergeant Brenner, Corporal Novak, PFC Hayes, Private Angelo Russo, Private Martin Keller, Private Sam Houston, Private Frank Kowalski, Private Joseph Murphy, Private David Chen, Private Michael O'Brien, Private Raymond Foster, Private John Becker, Private William Grant. 14 names. Most of them would not survive. When the artillery stopped, the forest went silent. Then they heard it, engines, the low rumble of diesel motors, tracks grinding through snow, voices shouting in German. Hargrove crawled to the edge of his foxhole and looked down the slope. Through the morning fog, he saw them, soldiers, dozens of them, moving in formation through the trees. Behind them, half-tracks and armored cars. Behind those, tanks. Jesus Christ, Brenner whispered beside him. Hargrove pulled out his binoculars and counted as they advanced, 50, 70, 100. They kept coming. He lowered the binoculars and looked at Brenner. Get everyone on the line. Fix bayonets. No one fires until I give the word. Brenner nodded and crawled back through the snow, moving from foxhole to foxhole, passing the order. The German infantry reached the base of the hill. They moved slowly, carefully, weapons ready. They expected resistance, but not much. Intelligence had told them this sector was held by a single understrength platoon, maybe 20 men, probably half dead from the artillery. They were wrong about the numbers, but they were right about one thing: the Americans were not going to retreat. Hargrove watched them climb. 50 meters. 40. 30. He could see their faces now, young men, teenagers, some of them terrified. 20 meters. Hargrove raised his hand. The Germans were almost at the wire. 15 meters. He dropped his hand. Now. 14 rifles opened fire at once. The lead German squad went down like puppets with cut strings. The men behind them dove for cover, shouting, scrambling, trying to find the source of the fire. Brenner's machine gun roared to life, raking the slope, tracers cutting through the fog. Men screamed. The Germans returned fire. Bullets snapped through the trees. Mortars began to fall. But the Americans held. For 10 minutes, the hill was chaos, smoke, noise, blood. Then the Germans pulled back. Hargrove counted the bodies, 17 dead, maybe a dozen wounded dragged away. He checked his own men. 1 casualty. Private Grant, shot through the shoulder, still alive, still fighting. Reload, Hargrove ordered. They'll be back. And they were. 30 minutes later, the second assault began. This time over 100 infantry, supported by mortars and machine guns, advancing in a skirmish line, professional and coordinated. Hargrove knew rifles wouldn't be enough. Bazookas up. Corporal Novak and Private Russo crawled forward. Novak fired. The rocket hit a half-track dead in the engine. Explosion. Fire. Men scattered. Russo fired next. Another vehicle destroyed. The advance faltered, but didn't break. A German captain stood in the open, waving his men forward, screaming orders. Hargrove aimed his M1 Garand. 1 shot. The captain fell. Without their commander, the assault collapsed. The Germans withdrew again, dragging their dead. Hargrove exhaled. How much ammunition? Brenner checked. Maybe 40%. Machine guns down to 2 belts. Hargrove nodded. They had stopped 2 assaults. But the day was just beginning, and the Germans were far from finished. 1,145 hours, December 16, 1944. The third assault came without warning, no artillery, no preparatory fire, just a sudden surge of German infantry from 3 directions at once. They had learned. Lieutenant Hargrove saw them coming up the north slope, the east slope, and straight up the center, over 150 men, a full company strength attack. Contact left. Contact right. Contact center. Brenner shouted, trying to direct fire, but there were too many targets and not enough guns. The machine gun swung left, cutting down 6 Germans, then right, dropping 4 more, but for every man that fell, 2 more kept coming. Private Keller fired his M1 as fast as he could reload, 8 rounds, ping, reload, his hands shaking, frost clinging to the rifle. "They're gonna overrun us," Houston yelled. Hargrove knew it. The Germans were 20 meters away, then 15, close enough to see ice in their beards, close enough to hear them breathing. "Grenades!" Hargrove screamed. 14 pins were pulled, counted, thrown. The explosions hit almost simultaneously, ripping through the enemy line, men thrown backward, others collapsing as screams mixed with ringing ears. The assault stalled, but only for a moment. A huge German sergeant charged up the hill firing an MP-40 from the hip, roaring orders, making it within 10 meters before Corporal Novak rose and shot him twice in the chest. The sergeant fell face-first into the snow, and his men broke. The third assault collapsed, leaving dozens more bodies behind. Hargrove slumped into his foxhole, hands numb, ears ringing, throat raw. Brenner crawled over. 3 assaults. 3 hours. They're not stopping. Casualties were mounting, Grant's shoulder worsening, Murphy hit in the leg, Kowalski concussed, Chen badly wounded, ammunition down to barely 20%, the machine gun on its last belt, grenades nearly gone, no bazooka rockets left. The math was simple, they were going to die on this hill. Brenner suggested pulling back, but Hargrove pointed to the road below, the main supply route for the entire 110th Regiment. If the Germans took the hill, they cut off 3 battalions. Over 1,000 men. So they stayed. At 1,400 hours, the Germans changed tactics. Mortars came in, 81 mm and 120 mm, steady, methodical, tearing the hill apart. There was nowhere to hide. O'Brien was killed instantly. Chen bled out despite Hayes's efforts, whispering that he was cold. Through the smoke, Hargrove spotted a German officer with a radio operator. "They're calling in artillery," he realized. Divisional guns would erase the hill entirely. They had minutes. "We don't wait for the artillery," Hargrove said. He proposed an attack, 8 men, straight down the western slope, hit the command post, kill the officer, destroy the radio. It was insane. It was the only option. At 1,430 hours, 8 men fixed bayonets and moved out, leaving 4 wounded soldiers behind to keep firing and sell the illusion. They reached the base unseen. 10 Germans at the command post. 8 Americans. On Hargrove's signal, they struck. The machine gun was silenced with knives. The guards went down in seconds. Hargrove shot the officer as he reached for his pistol. The radio was smashed to pieces. Then the Germans reacted. The Americans ran uphill under fire, Foster shot through the leg, Becker dragging him the last yards. They dove back into their foxholes just as the enemy surged forward again. "Did you get it?" Murphy shouted. "We got it," Hargrove yelled back. There was no celebration. The Germans were coming again, and this time, they were bringing everything. 1,520 hours, December 16, 1944. The fourth assault was different. The Germans weren't cautious anymore. They weren't tactical. They were angry. An American lieutenant and 7 men had walked into their command post and killed 10 soldiers in under a minute. They had destroyed the radio. Humiliated an entire company. Now they wanted blood. Over 200 German infantry emerged from the treeline, 2 full companies, supported by 3 half-tracks mounting 20 mm autocannons. They didn't advance in careful formations. They charged. A human wave rolling up the hill. Lieutenant Hargrove looked at his men. 13 Americans. most of them wounded. Almost no ammunition left. Staff Sergeant Brenner had 8 rounds for his rifle. Corporal Novak had 6. Private Keller had 4. The machine gun had maybe 50 rounds remaining in the last belt. They had 9 grenades total. That was it. "We can't stop this," Brenner said quietly. Hargrove looked down at the approaching mass of soldiers. The autocannons were already firing, raking the hilltop with 20mm explosive shells. Trees shattered. The ground erupted in frozen dirt and snow. He looked at his sergeant. "No," Hargrove said. "We can't." So we make them pay for every inch." Brenner nodded slowly. "Center of mass. Aimed fire. Make every bullet count. Pass the word." The Germans were 100 meters away. 90. 80. The autocannons kept firing. One shell hit the edge of Private Murphy's foxhole, collapsing half of it. Murphy crawled out, covered in dirt, still gripping his rifle. 70 meters. Hargrove could see individual faces now, young men, old men, scared men, angry men, all of them coming to kill him. 60 meters. "Steady," Hargrove called out, his voice calm, almost conversational. "Pick your targets." 50 meters. The Germans were screaming now, battle cries, rage, fear. 40 meters. Fire. 13 rifles spoke as one. The first rank of Germans went down. Headshots. Center mass. Precise. Professional. Every bullet found a target. But it wasn't enough. The second rank kept coming. The third rank. The fourth. The machine gun opened up. Corporal Novak was behind it now, traversed left to right, disciplined bursts. Men fell in clusters. But still they came. 30 meters. Hargrove was firing on semi-automatic. Breathe. Aim. Squeeze. One German dropped. Chamber another round. Breathe. Aim. Squeeze. Another dropped. His rifle locked back empty. He grabbed his last magazine, 8 rounds. 20 meters. Private Russo threw a grenade. It landed in the middle of a German squad. The explosion carved a hole in their formation. 5 men down. But 20 more filled the gap. 15 meters. Grenades. Everything we have. 8 grenades flew through the air. The explosions were catastrophic at that range. Bodies tumbled backward. Screams. Blood on snow. But still they came. 10 meters. The machine gun went silent, out of ammunition. Novak dropped it and drew his pistol. The Germans reached the wire. Some of them got tangled. Some jumped over. Some crawled under. 5 meters. Hand to hand. A German soldier lunged at Hargrove with a bayonet. Hargrove sidestepped, smashed the man's face with his rifle butt, then shot him twice. The body fell into the foxhole. Brenner was fighting 2 Germans at once. He blocked a rifle thrust with his own weapon, kicked one man in the knee, shot the other, then spun and bayoneted the first through the stomach. Private Hayes had run out of ammunition. He was using his entrenching tool as a weapon, swinging it like an axe. A German grabbed him from behind. Hayes reversed the shovel and drove the blade backward into the man's throat. Private Keller was out of bullets, out of grenades. He picked up a German rifle from a dead soldier and kept firing. It was chaos, screaming, shooting, stabbing, dying. And then, suddenly, a whistle blew. The Germans pulled back. Not a retreat. A tactical withdrawal, falling back 20 meters to regroup. Hargrove collapsed against the side of his foxhole, gasping for air. His hands were shaking. His uniform was covered in blood, his own and others. He looked around. Private Foster was dead, shot through the head during the charge. Private Chen had died from his wounds, bled out quietly while the fighting raged around him. That left 11. 11 men still alive. Brenner crawled over to Hargrove. "We're out," he said. "Completely out. No rifle ammunition. No machine gun ammunition. No grenades. Nothing." Hargrove nodded. He'd known it was coming. "Pistols? Maybe 30 rounds total between all of us." Hargrove looked down the slope. The Germans were reforming. An officer was walking among them, shouting orders, pointing at the hill. They were preparing for one more assault. The final assault. "Get everyone together," Hargrove said. Brenner gathered the survivors in the largest foxhole, 11 men, some bleeding, some limping, all exhausted. Lieutenant Hargrove. Staff Sergeant Brenner. Corporal Novak. PFC Hayes. Private Russo. Private Keller. Private Houston. Private Becker. Private Murphy. Private Kowalski. Private Grant. Hargrove looked at each of them. "We're out of ammunition," he said simply. "The next time they come, we won't be able to stop them." No one spoke. "So I'm giving you a choice. We can surrender. Put down our weapons. Live." He paused. "Or we can finish this." Private Houston spoke first. "How many did we kill, sir?" Hargrove had been counting. "At least 60. Probably closer to 80. Houston nodded. 80 Germans. 11 of us." He smiled, tired and bloody. "That's not bad." "Not bad at all," Corporal Novak agreed. Private Russo stood up, wincing from a shrapnel wound in his side. "My grandfather came from Sicily. You know what he told me before I enlisted? He said, 'Angelo, if you're going to die, die like a man.' Well, I figure dying on a hill in Belgium, taking Nazis with me, that counts." Private Keller laughed, a short, sharp laugh. "I'm from Brooklyn. If I surrender, I'll never hear the end of it. My mother will kill me herself." One by one, the others nodded. "No surrender." Brenner looked at Hargrove. "So how do we do this, Lieutenant? They've got 200 men. We've got 11 and 30 pistol rounds." Hargrove thought for a moment. Then he smiled. "We don't defend the hill. We take the fight to them." Brenner stared. "Explain." Hargrove pointed down the slope. "They're expecting us to stay here. Wait for them to overrun us. So we do the opposite. We charge. All of us. Straight into their formation. Before they're ready. Before they expect it. That's insane. It's the only chance we have. They outnumber us 20 to 1. If they come to us, they'll surround us and we'll die in this hole without taking anyone with us. But if we hit them first, while they're still forming up, we might kill another 10. Another 20. He looked at his men. And when we run out of bullets, we use our knives. And when our knives break, we use our hands. We fight until there's nothing left to fight with." Private Murphy, sitting with his wounded leg stretched out, spoke quietly. "What's the point, sir? We're gonna die either way." Hargrove nodded. "You're right, Murphy. We are. But those men down there? They think we're already finished. They think we're broken. They think this is easy." He stood up. "Let's show them it's not." Brenner rose beside him. "If we're doing this, we do it right. Line formation. Fix bayonets. We hit them like a cavalry charge. Fast and mean." The men stood up one by one, wounded, exhausted, out of ammunition, but not beaten. They fixed bayonets. They checked their pistols. They formed a line at the edge of the foxholes. 11 men. Hargrove looked down the hill. The Germans were almost ready. Another minute, maybe two, and they would begin their assault. He didn't give them the chance. "For easy company!" Hargrove shouted. "For easy company," the others roared back. And they charged. 11 Americans running down a frozen hill in the Ardennes forest, December 1944, into an enemy force 20 times their size, screaming, shooting, dying, but never surrendering. The Germans saw them coming and froze, just for a second, just long enough, because this wasn't supposed to happen. The Americans were supposed to be pinned, suppressed, terrified. They weren't supposed to attack. Hargrove fired his pistol as he ran. One shot, a German fell. Another shot, another German dropped. Brenner was beside him, firing his .45, roaring like a madman. Novak. Hayes. Russo. Keller. Houston. Becker. All of them running, shooting, closing the distance. The Germans recovered from their shock and opened fire. Private Becker was hit first, 3 rounds to the chest. He went down hard, but even as he fell, he threw his knife. It buried itself in a German's throat. Private Grant was hit in the head, killed instantly. Private Kowalski took a burst from an MP-40. He staggered, kept running for 3 more steps, then collapsed. But the Americans reached the German line, and then it was knife work. Hargrove shot a German in the face, then drove his bayonet into another's stomach, pulled it free, turned, blocked a rifle thrust, stabbed upward into the man's armpit. Brenner was a whirlwind, shooting, stabbing, kicking. A German soldier swung a rifle at his head. Brenner ducked, came up inside the man's guard, and drove his knife under the ribs. Corporal Novak ran out of ammunition. He reversed his pistol and used it as a club, smashing it into a German's jaw, breaking bone. Private Russo was surrounded by 3 Germans. He shot one, stabbed another, and tackled the third, both of them rolling down the slope in a tangle of fists and knives. Private Keller was screaming in German, he'd learned it from his immigrant parents. He didn't know if the words made sense, but the Germans hesitated, confused, and that hesitation cost them. Private Houston fought with his bare hands after his pistol jammed. He grabbed a German by the helmet and slammed his head into a tree, again and again, until the man stopped moving. But there were too many. Private Russo went down, stabbed in the back. Private Keller took a bullet to the shoulder, then another to the chest. He fell to his knees, still swinging his knife, until a German shot him in the head. Private Houston was clubbed from behind. He turned, dazed, and a bayonet went through his throat. PFC Hayes fought 3 Germans at once. He killed one with his knife, wounded another, and the third shot him twice. Hayes fell, blood spreading across the snow. Corporal Novak was still standing, still fighting. He'd picked up a German rifle and was using it as a spear, stabbing, thrusting, keeping them at bay. Then a German machine gunner opened fire from 20 meters away. The bullet stitched across Novak's chest. He dropped. Now it was just 3, Hargrove, Brenner, Murphy. Murphy had crawled down the hill on his wounded leg, dragging himself forward, firing his pistol until it clicked empty. Now he was on the ground, bleeding, but still alive. Brenner was standing over him, fighting off 4 Germans with a knife in one hand and a broken rifle in the other. "Lieutenant!" Brenner shouted. "Get out of here!" But Hargrove wasn't leaving. He shot the last round from his pistol into a German's chest, then threw the empty weapon at another man's face, grabbed his knife, and charged. A German rifle but caught him in the ribs. He felt something crack. Dropped to one knee. Looked up and saw a bayonet coming at his face. He rolled left. The blade missed by inches. He came up slashing. His knife opened a German's throat. Blood sprayed hot across his face. Another German tackled him from the side. They hit the ground together. Hargrove lost his knife. The German was on top of him, hands around his throat, squeezing. Hargrove couldn't breathe. His vision narrowed. He reached up, found the German's eyes with his thumbs, and pressed. The German screamed and let go. Hargrove threw him off, scrambled for his knife, found it, spun, and a rifle shot cracked across the hill. Hargrove felt the impact in his shoulder. Hot. Sharp. He staggered. Another shot hit his leg. He went down. 10 meters away, Brenner was still fighting, blood running down his face, knife in his hand, 3 Germans circling him. He killed one more before they brought him down. And then it was just Murphy. Private Joseph Murphy, 22 years old, farm boy from Iowa, shot in the leg, lying in the snow, watching his friends die. A German officer walked over to him, pistol in hand. Murphy looked up at him. "Go to hell," Murphy said in perfect, clear English. The officer raised his pistol, and then, from somewhere in the distance, a sound. Engines. The officer froze, turned, looked west. Murphy turned his head, confused. Through the trees, through the smoke and snow, he saw them, tanks. American tanks. Sherman tanks, 5 of them, coming up the road at full speed. Behind them, half-tracks full of infantry. The 9th Armored Division. Reinforcements. The German officer's face went pale. He shouted orders. His men started to retreat, running, scrambling, abandoning the hill. The officer looked down at Murphy one more time, then turned and ran. Murphy lay in the snow, bleeding, barely conscious. The American tanks rolled past him, turrets swiveling, firing into the retreating Germans. Infantry dismounted and swept the hilltop. A medic knelt beside Murphy. "Easy, soldier. We've got you. You're safe." Murphy tried to speak. His voice was barely a whisper. The others, the medic looked around at the bodies, at the blood. "You held the hill," the medic said quietly. "You held it." Murphy's eyes closed. December 17, 1944, 0800 hours. Private Joseph Murphy woke up in a field hospital 20 miles behind the lines. His leg was in a cast, his chest wrapped in bandages, and 4 dripping morphine into his arm. For a long moment he didn't remember where he was. Then it all came back, the hill, the Germans, the fighting, his friends. He tried to sit up and pain shot through his body. A nurse appeared beside him, pushing him gently back down. "Easy, Private. You need to rest." "Where am I?" Murphy's voice was hoarse. "Field Hospital. Bastogne Sector. You've been unconscious for 14 hours. Murphy looked around. The tent was full of wounded men, dozens of them, some moaning, some silent. "The others," Murphy said. "From my platoon." "Where are they?" The nurse's expression changed. She looked away. "I'll get the doctor." Wait, but she was already gone. 5 minutes later, a captain walked in, medical corps, tired eyes, blood on his uniform. He pulled up a chair beside Murphy's cot. "Private Murphy." "I'm Captain Ellison. How are you feeling?" "Where's my platoon?" The captain was quiet for a moment. Then he opened a folder. Inside were papers. Reports. "You were found on Hill 493 by elements of the 9th Armored Division at approximately 1630 hours on December 16. You were the only survivor." Murphy stared at him. "What?" "You were the only one left alive, Private." "No," Murphy shook his head. "No, that's not." Brenner was still fighting. "And the lieutenant?" "I saw them." They were both killed in action," the captain said gently. "Along with the rest of your platoon. We recovered 11 bodies from the hilltop and the surrounding area. You were the 12th man. The only one who survived." Murphy felt something break inside him. Hargrove. Brenner. Novak. Hayes. Russo. Keller. Houston. Becker. Foster. Chen. O'Brien. Grant. Kowalski. All dead. The captain continued. The 9th Armored's after-action report states they found you surrounded by approximately 90 German bodies. Some killed by rifle fire. Some by grenades. Some by bayonet and knife wounds. He looked at Murphy. Private, what happened on that hill? Murphy didn't answer. He was staring at the ceiling, seeing faces, hearing voices. The captain tried again. The Germans committed an entire battalion to taking Hill 493. Over 300 men. According to their captured logs, they suffered 147 killed and over 200 wounded in the assault. That's nearly 70% casualties. He paused. Your platoon, 14 men, held that position for over 10 hours against overwhelming odds. You stopped a German advance that could have cut off the entire 110th Regiment. You saved 1,000 lives. Murphy finally looked at him. We didn't save anyone. We just died slower than they expected. The captain shook his head. No, Private. You won. The Germans never took that hill. They never got the road. The 110th held their positions because of you. Murphy closed his eyes. It doesn't feel like winning. The captain stood. I know. It never does. He placed a hand on Murphy's shoulder. Rest, Private. The war will still be here when you wake up. December 20th, 1944. Murphy was transferred to a larger hospital in Liège, Belgium. His leg was healing. The shrapnel wounds were closing. But he wasn't sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, he was back on the hill, hearing the mortars, seeing Novak on the machine gun, watching Hargrove charge down the slope. A chaplain visited him on the 3rd day. Private Murphy? I'm Father Donnelly. I wanted to talk to you about your platoon. Murphy didn't look at him. I don't want to talk. I understand. But there's something you should know. The chaplain pulled out a newspaper. It was Stars and Stripes, dated December 19th. He handed it to Murphy. The headline read, 14 heroes hold the line. Below it was a grainy photograph. Murphy recognized it immediately, Hill 493. The article described the battle, how a single American platoon had held off an entire German battalion, how they'd fought to the last man, how they'd saved the 110th Regiment from encirclement. At the bottom was a list of names: 1st Lieutenant James Hargrove, S/Sergeant Carl Brenner, Corporal Edward Novak, PFC Leon Hayes, Private Angelo Russo, Private Martin Keller, Private Sam Houston, Private Frank Kowalski, Private Raymond Foster, Private David Chin, Private Michael O'Brien, Private William Grant, Private John Becker, Private Joseph Murphy, sole survivor. Murphy stared at the names. They're calling it one of the greatest defensive actions of the war, Father Donnelly said quietly. The men from the 9th Armored said they'd never seen anything like it. Murphy's hands were shaking. They shouldn't be famous. They should be alive. Yes, the chaplain said. They should. But they chose to stand. And because they stood, others lived. Murphy looked up. Did it matter? Father Donnelly nodded. Your platoon bought time. Time for reinforcements. Time for defenses. 10 hours. That was enough. The chaplain stood. General Cota wants to recommend your platoon for the Medal of Honor. All 14 of you. After he left, Murphy read the article again and again, memorizing every word, every name. December 25, 1944. Murphy sat in a wheelchair outside the hospital, watching snow fall. A jeep pulled up. A colonel stepped out. Private Murphy? I'm Colonel Peterson. I commanded the 110th Regiment. He spoke quietly. I walked that hill myself. I've never seen anything like what your platoon did. He handed Murphy a small box. This belonged to Lieutenant Hargrove. Inside was a blood-stained letter addressed to Hargrove's wife. Murphy read it, hands shaking, tears running down his face. Peterson said softly, "You're the last one, Private." That means you carry their story. How? Murphy asked. You survive. You tell people about Hill 493. January 15, 1945. Murphy was declared fit for light duty. In April, Germany surrendered. In May, Murphy went home. In June 1945, President Truman presented 14 Medals of Honor. 13 posthumous. 1 to Murphy. He looked at the families and said, "This medal doesn't belong to me. It belongs to 13 men who died on a hill in Belgium." The audience rose, applauding, but Murphy didn't hear it. He was back on Hill 493, standing with his friends, watching the snow fall, waiting for the next assault. Joseph Murphy lived to be 91 years old. He never spoke publicly about Hill 493 except at reunions and memorial services, but every year, on December 16, he returned to Belgium, to the Ardennes forest, to a small hill with no name. In 1952, the Belgian government erected a monument there, a simple stone marker with 14 names carved into it. Murphy would stand at that monument for hours, sometimes alone, sometimes with the families of his fallen friends. He would tell stories, about Hargrove's calm leadership, Brenner's fierce loyalty, Novak's dark humor, Hay's kindness, about all of them, and he made sure they were remembered. In his final interview, given 3 weeks before his death in 2012, Murphy was asked what he wanted people to know about World War II. He thought for a long moment, then said, "People think war is about nations, about politics, about grand strategy. But it's not. War is about moments. Small moments. When a few people have to decide whether to stand or run, whether to fight or surrender, whether to live for themselves or die for others." He paused. On December 16, 1944, 14 men made that choice. They chose to stand. And because they stood, I'm sitting here today. Because they stood, their families got to grow old. Because they stood, the world is a different place. He looked directly at the camera. That's what I want people to remember. Not the tactics. Not the weapons. Not even the victory. Just this: when it mattered most, 14 ordinary men did something extraordinary. And that made all the difference. Joseph Murphy died on January 8, 2012. He was buried in Arlington National Cemetery, next to the men he'd served with. His headstone reads, "Joseph Murphy, PVT, U.S. Army, World War II, Medal of Honor, Hill 493, December 16, 1944, last man standing." On his funeral day, representatives from the Belgian government attended, as did the families of the 13 men who had died on that hill 67 years earlier. They stood together in the snow, under a gray sky, and told the stories one more time, about a hill with no name, about 14 men who refused to fall, about the day ordinary soldiers became legends, and in the silence that followed, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear it, the sound of rifles firing, the sound of men shouting, the sound of history being written in blood and snow. Hill 493. December 16, 1944. Where 14 men held the line, and changed the world.